Okay, thanks for taking the time to watch this video presentation discussing technology, integration, and relative issues, and this mainly is focused on higher education. So just follow along and pay attention as I explain as our group presentation on this topic for this week. As many of you probably see in your own classrooms, there are both positives or pros and negatives or cons of technology. And pretty much one of the goals that most teachers have while we become teachers at all levels is to try and transmit knowledge and understanding of material so that students have a better understanding, whether it be content or just critical thinking in general. So this idea of technology and basically teaching knowledge or teachnology that's kind of being conveyed here has its pros and cons. A pro that we generally see discussed is the possibility for innovation in the classroom. Technology can really innovate the classroom and engage students. And generally, as we see here, students are more adept to modern technology. These students in our today's society are usually brought up with technology. They know it just as well, if not better than us. On the other side of that, students tend to be a lot more impatient about slow technology. We see this oftentimes when we grade stuff and students don't see that return, when it takes a little bit longer to give them feedback, those kinds of things, or maybe our inability to use and understand the technology that they know so well. So possibility for lack of preparation and training of teachers. We oftentimes feel ill-prepared in using and embracing this technology that is sometimes thrown upon us. And I believe this is something that's not just at secondary or primary levels. This is something that is found in higher education, as we see from the light text. As I previously mentioned, most of this information is being seen from the light text, and you can see a great quote that we as a group found on page 183 discussing how technology and education can function really well together, or conversely, can actually cause more problems. Within this text, Light describes education much more and technology integration as a path rather than the actual destination. Too often, arguably, we try to see it as the destination. So as it's quoted here, technology works best when it is used not as a device to get someplace, but rather as the destination itself. So this idea of creating this path, as he kind of explains, or she explains in the text, really fulfills this idea of what education is supposed to be. And many of us have kind of argued this before when we look at curriculum. The curriculum is more of the development of the path, not necessarily the end goal. And many of us would argue this back and forth, but probably collectively we have kind of adjusted our views over time. And when we would define curriculum, we see it as this path or a course that we take in our life. It's not just necessarily the destination that is sought out, just like technology should be when it's implemented in education. Again, technology should be seen as a tool, as we see here, or a means, not as a crutch or the end goal. So technology does not transform learning. It can encourage or enhance learning, though. So as we've mentioned before, this idea of implementing technology in the classroom really can enhance understanding for students, but technology shouldn't just be the end goal. So too often we see teachers at all levels of education improperly using technology to convey meaning or understanding, and an example of this is oftentimes a teacher with basically the idea of the old transparency, but now it's called a PowerPoint, reading off the PowerPoint and not really trying to engage the students in understanding. So this death by PowerPoint that we often associate today is basically just technology of the transparency brought into the computer for future references, but not really engaging the students' knowledge, understanding, or engaging them socially. As we all know, technology is an ever-changing part of life. Society is ever-changing, as well as technology too. So when we look at technology today, we even at Mercer have experienced some of these new forms of technology, such as distance learning. Many of us have experienced this, or actually all of us have experienced this in the classroom, and we understand that this can really engage or enhance understanding, and sometimes we seem a little bit less engage, though, as some of us have argued in class discussions. So this idea of distance learning, of one individual being one place and other individuals being elsewhere, and we kind of really see this as we are being presented tonight with this idea of Blackboard Collaborate. We've got flexible learning, which kind of blends them together, much like a hybrid or blended learning. You've got dual mode teaching, online education, where there perhaps is no actual discussion between a professor or a teacher, a facilitator, and the students, but it may be computer-mediated communication, technology-mediated knowledge. All these kinds of things are new facets found within the realm of higher education. And even here at the bottom depiction, as we see, this is much similar to the distant learning classrooms that we'd experience, where a professor is either in your class or in a distance learning site conveying information while students are in a distant location through some form of media or multimedia fashion. Now, there's several factors we have to actually think of when we want to actually engage meaningful use of technology into the classroom. There are social factors here, where you got peer support, shared values within the department. All these kinds of things are parameters and ideas that we need to think about when we want to engage meaningful use of technology. Also, physical resources, the idea of ease and reliability of technology. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes we don't have access to it. Those kinds of things are factors that we need to consider when doing this, as well as personal factors. Teacher interest in enhancing student learning. Are you more of a child-centered or student-centered view of this? Improving teaching, how does this work? And then how are you going to implement instructional practices through technology that will both enhance and engage students at the same time? These are all things that teachers as well as higher education must consider as factors for engaging meaningful use of technology. And the last area of discussion that I want to bring up is tensions and considerations. There are financial and quality control situations that we have to think about when we're trying to engage technology and student understanding. So is it cost effective? What investments have to be made? These kinds of things. Do we want to go for a global versus a local appeal to education? Are we hitting a larger audience? Or would we rather be face-to-face? Is this going to be an open or closed learning? Is it traditional? These are all factors and tensions that need to be brought into consideration when somebody is developing and implementing a new plan for technology within all forms of education, whether it be higher education or primary education or secondary education. And is lastly going to be tech or technology mediated or non-mediated communication? So is it closely associated with ability to write and read from technology? So all these kinds of things that are developed, and how we're going to implement these and how it's going to function or not function within the parameters of education and student understanding. So this is basically going to conclude our introduction of technology integration and implications that are associated with that. And we'll guide you further along in our presentation momentarily. Thank you very much and have a good day.